Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who, if he were a fish, would have the thought pattern, swim, swim, hungry, swim, swim, hungry.
Tim Longo. I get it. Got it.
You know what that is, okay, because you did a little research on our guest as well today, so You know what that is. Astute listeners will know. Our guest today is Mr. Tom Hall, a longtime video game developer and project lead for Anachronox, which we've of course been playing. Having tinkered with the Apple II as a youngster, Mr. Hall got into game development professionally in the mid-'80s. And while at Softdisk, met a couple of other luminaries, John Carmack and John Romero, with whom he would leave and found id Software. Much of the rest is, of course, history, as they would go on to create Commander Keen, Wolfenstein, and, of course, Doom. He left id in 1993 to work with Apogee Software, where he designed Rise of the Triad, as well as producing Terminal Velocity. A lot longer after that, he joined back up with John Romero to co-found Ion Storm, where he led Anachronox, our subject today. After its closure, he moved with John to found Monkey Stone Games, working in mobile and delivering Hyperspace Delivery Boy. He's also worked at King Isle Entertainment, Loot Drop, and currently is with PlayFirst. Welcome to the program, Proud Badger Tom Hall, and welcome also, of course, to Pal 18. Hello.
Hello there. Pal, you sit by the side, and I'll be talking now.
That's right. That's
Why
probably
you
the
gotta
best.
put me on the side for?
Perfect. A rare treat. We didn't expect that. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, you book somebody, and you manage to get some other people come along with them. It's always helpful. Welcome to the show. I have to start with just, where did this game come from? Like, what? It's such a sprawling, strange game, kind of genre-defying in a way, which I think we'll get to. But what was the genesis of this game as a concept, as an idea?
Well, it's a lot of different influences coming together. As a teenager, I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so I was a fan of sort of like science fiction with humor in it. And I had been a science fiction fan all my life, so that was a rich subject for me, as well as a science fan. So I like, reading about hard science and stuff, and prefer stuff that's kind of based in an interesting scientific sort of context. And then, as far as like this actually coming about as a game, it's sort of a confluence of, I'm a fan of JRPGs. Chrono Trigger is probably my favorite game. And that sort of comes together with sort of an old love of adventure games, both text and graphical. So like, I love the old text adventures, but I also love like Secret of Monkey Island and things like that. So sort of you'll notice like it's an RPG, sort of like a American riff on a JRPG, but if you actually get down to what you do in a lot of areas, it's sort of adventure-like. So you have to find an object and manipulate some stuff and so on in between all the sort of RPG exploration and battling and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. The adventure game stuff was, I think, the biggest surprise, because it had always been, in my memory, I had thought of as an RPG. Neither of us had played it before. We were busy shipping a game this year, as I recall. So it was, I definitely remembered it being billed and marketed as an RPG and less as an adventure game.
It truly is, an RPG, but it's just like if you kind of look at some of the quests, they will be like sort of adventure breaks in the RPG.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it was actually, it was a delightful surprise though, in kind of just mixing up the pacing and having some different genres kind of creep in there. So it's cool to hear the influences. I'm also interested, like specifically about the generation of the world itself. I mean, the influences you mentioned, Hitchhikers didn't come up in our conversation, but now that you mention it, that's a really good get. It seems like a pretty deep deep game world when it comes to lore and background explanation. You mentioned hard science, and we really loved the sort of the Big Bang, Big Bang Theory aspects and the pre and post universes and such. And that was really cool that it was such a mixture of sci-fi and science. But how deeply did you guys go? Did you have a lore Bible, or did you like?
Oh yeah, I wrote a big sort of like universe. I actually somewhere have a big piece of foam core cardboard.
Oh, cool.
With a map of the universe, and we got to just a couple places in it.
Yeah,
and
right.
I had a sort of Anachronox Bible that had about 400 different creatures or beings that inhabited the universe. And
what? That's
amazing. Yeah. So I wanted to have a living, breathing world when we made Anachronox. So I made up all these different companies and so on, and figured out the way like they communicate or get current data safely to all the places in the universe and so on. And so you don't necessarily interact with that, but when characters mention that, they sound like they are speaking truth because there is facts behind it. So it's always, consistent.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because it felt like, it felt like this was a game number 3 in a whole, franchise or something, right? It was just there was so much going on in the subtext, and like you said, and people were referencing things and all the alien races specifically, and then the languages and it was really,
that was me continuing sort of I started making up signs, and I just wanted to make an exit sign in Commander Key, and I thought it should be an alien script, so I just made sort of 4 letters that look badly like exit, but were sort of alien. And then I thought, I should make an alphabet, and so that wound up being Standard Galactic Alphabet. And later that's used Minecraft and stuff. But for this, I wanted the same kind of little secrets and stuff. So there's a Brebulan alphabet, and there's actually an alphabet we didn't actually wind up using because that was in the second half of the game, which was now the next game that isn't done.
So yeah, it had been meant to be. So it had been meant to be, I guess, a bigger game. So I guess in the second part, is that where the black and white stuff came? I have this very clear memory of black and white area.
Yeah, there's a really inventive. There's a black and white sort of piratey world, and then there was a very inventive sort of digital world that was actually Palattine's home world.
Oh, sweet.
That was going to be in there, which you'd have to visit to sort of figure out how to chase the enemy and stuff like that. And the black and white world was going to be really cool and interesting, but the digital world was using a new technique that Lee Perry invented. Lee Perry later went on to Epic and was the original designer of Fortnite and all that. Anyway, so the cool technique was sort of, I think it was inverting normals in the model or something. So basically you figured out a way to make black outlines around 3D models so they look like they were, sort of drawn and then I don't know where it was, but was it Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio came out, and it had that, and later Borderlands and stuff, but it's oh no, and he says, do you know how much this hurts?
Yeah, right. Could have been the trendsetter.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of really cool places in there, and I always want to save it for eventually I'll do that, but I'll try to get that story out somehow to sort of have closure. No, I don't know anybody that's going to just suddenly drop $10 million for the sequel, but one holds all hope.
Right. But you have it all. You know what's going to happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we had been warned because, like Brett said, neither of us had played it, but we'd been warned from listeners and such that it did end in a cliffhangery way, and there was so and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that'll be fine, I get it, but then I got there and I'm like, oh
what?
I want to know. Even though I knew it was coming, it was like the Titanic. I knew it was coming, but yeah.
Anyone watching the rest of this episode may have spoilers.
Yeah.
It's only been 16 years or so, but spoiler
absolutely. Away. Absolutely. All of our shows about spoilers. So yeah. And the humor, the other sort of, obviously you mentioned Hitchhiker and your love of humor, but I'd like to delve into that some, especially in the writing style and kind of talk about the writing process a little bit, because I think you had multiple writers on it, right? It wasn't just
I framed out the story, but the primary writer on the project was Richard Zangrand Gobert.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
we just call him Richie, but
much shorter.
But he's a brilliant writer, and has gone on to more writing and game design and stuff like that. He's a brilliant guy, and the game wouldn't have been so cinematic without the direction of Jake Hughes.
Yes.
He's just a brilliant, this is like he had, made short films, and this was the sort of camera system that Joey Liao did, Planet, allowed him to sort of like do everything he ever wanted to do in filmmaking. So he did, and Anachronox was way better for it, and they had made that short film together, so Jake's direction and Richie's sense of story and script writing they're both amazing at it. Basically, that and Joey's Planet and Brian Squirrel Iserloh's Ape Language, the Anachronox programming environment allowed us to make like little interactive mini games. So I programmed the escaping Sunder in the shuttle. Wow. And a lot of like Bugaboo and all the little mini games that like Cooper is in there and all that, and even the coming soon sign was done in that. There's just a whole bunch of things. I programmed the that sort of platform adventure kind of room. Was it above lava or whatever? But you're moving a platform around, and you have to get the sort of lever and put it back to activate this to get that, and so on. So it was fun to be able to do that.
Including all the mini games for each of the characters? Was that done in that same style too?
Yeah, exactly. So like, Art would draw up a cool lock-picking set of graphics, and we just use that to quickly generate the mini game. Now, these days that would be Lua or something.
Sure.
But, at the time, it was cool to have our own and sort of be able to control everything in the game with it.
Yeah, I had met Jake at Crystal Dynamics when he was there. Really, really talented guy. And that was another definitely big takeaway for us. Some of those cinematics were epic, and just, doing things that from my memory, I don't remember a lot of games, especially in engine, doing that kind of, elaborate cinematic, treatment to things. And it really definitely made it stand apart. I would say another surprise for me, to be honest. I didn't know Jake had worked on this. And so after the fact, I kind of realized why they were so good, but pretty elaborate, storytelling for the time.
Right. Yeah. They also worked on that. There's a Blu-ray you can get of the, is it the Watchmen sort of animated comics?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
like
he did
motion comics.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you'll see like, sort of like the frame of the comic come to life. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a cool project that they worked on. Did they work on that together then, or is that just Jake? Oh, okay, cool. And then kind of a little bit along those lines. This might be sort of a smaller topic, but facial animation and facial rigging, that was also a thing that surprised me, and I think it was pretty cutting edge at the time, wasn't it?
That stood out. It was pretty cutting edge, and it was important for us to have that ability to sort of like emote in the cinematics, so, and you'll notice that usually characters of that time have like mitten hands. They don't have gestures, but I made sure that we had at least the index finger so they could point to things and sort of indicate things and have more ability to look like they're doing something interesting, and their hands don't look stupid.
Yeah.
We tap on things and stuff.
Yeah. We all went through the mitten hands phase, and then you get the one finger, and then all the fingers, and So go ahead.
Just back to the sort of the genesis of the story, though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about.
So the story started, as all great stories do, in the bathroom. I was just... ideas come to you like when you're falling asleep, or when you're getting up, or when you're driving, or when you're in the bathroom or in the shower. So I was in the bathroom, and the word Anachronox just came into my head with nothing attached to it. And it was just like, well, what's that? And I sort of broke it apart, and it's like, well, it's something not in its own time, an anachronism, or something in the wrong time. And then Nox is sort of like noxious, sort of like poison. So I thought, well, maybe it could be like poison from the past. Well, what does that mean? And then I sort of set about constructing characters that each had a poison in their past that they needed to heal from, plus a universe that had poison in its past that was threatening.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Wow.
So I had the amazing good fortune, just because he was at the Dallas Video Festival or Film Festival or something, to meet Terry Gilliam from Monty Python and director of Brazil, which great films. And I just said, it's just like, just got to ask you, like, my process is you have, all these little ideas kind of, coming together, and then eventually, like, your whole sort of story universe makes sense, and everything just blasts out at once. It's just like, everything makes sense now, I just have to write it down. And he says, yeah, that's pretty much my process too. And I was like, yes. So it's good to sort of have validation in that sense of how you work. But that's pretty much how a lot of little ideas, I was thinking of doing like a sci-fi RPG, and a lot of little ideas were coming together. But then when that uniting concept framed the whole thing, it was clear what it had to be and what was happening.
Yeah, that's a really...
just flowed out of that.
You say that. I mean, one of the things that I said in the final episode we were talking about the game is how Sly had changed. That he was back at where he started, but he was a different man, right? And it's a really interesting lens to me to think of everyone as having a poisoned past. That is... Yeah, that's a really fantastic way to look at all the characters. The only one I wonder about how this fits in is his pal, and that might be part of the cutting floor. Like, I don't have a sense of his past as much, probably, but other than he got turned off.
Well, he got turned off. Part of his story and past was going to be more talked about in his homeworld and stuff like that. So we didn't quite get to that, but he's not like the current model of the PAL, which is PAL 21. So he's kind of like a really old, like having an iPhone 3 now, 3G now, that kind of thing. But we'd have gotten into that. So someday I'll get all that down and out somehow. Another thing though is Sly Boots was actually a detective character I wrote in college. Nice. So it was way before this, and it was just a normal detective, and it was based on, I was a fan of the Firesign Theater. They did kind of radio plays on albums. And there's a character that they have called Nick Danger. And Nick Danger is a a detective, and sort of the vibe you get with Boots, you'll find fairly familiar because he's like tries to be big shot, and he's obviously not, so that fandom sort of like is one of the other little bits and pieces that are synthesized into the new work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean the other, kind of a good segue to one of my other kind of topics was really the characters themselves, the cast of characters and your party members, because they were all, another thing that kept kind of catching us off guard is how diverse, not just the experiences and the locations and the scenarios you're going to, and we'll get to that probably later, but the characters themselves are just, each of them they're just so different from each other. And we got to talk about Democratus. Potentially my favorite RPG party member of all time now. So thank you for that. Just all the sort of surprises that come with that character. If you can call him that or it that.
Them that.
Yeah. But I guess I wanted, maybe if you can just kind of delve into a little bit, like, how did the characters come about, and maybe just a little bit about each of them and the Anachronox sort of, like the lens, as Brett said, is a great, intro to that. But I'd like to delve into each of them a little bit. Even the names are great. But how did you come? And then which in your 400-page Bible or what have you, are there any that didn't make it in that you'd want to mention too? But yeah.
All right. Well, Democratus, the sort of the key surprise came from I architected a big story. I thought Poison from the Past. Well, what if that meant, past universe or something? So I sort of like framed it, with this big sort of huge sort of hard science, if that was the actual way it works out, story. And then I thought, well, I have this big story and I have to fill it with, those crazy reveal moments or twists or reversals and stuff. So I thought, like, what are the most surprising things I can think of? And I think part of this also was a little inspired by a moment in Carmack's D&D world.
Oh,
so yeah, I don't know where he got that, but there was a thing called I think it was a dwarven heartstone or something in the world, and so we're just told these are so amazingly magic, and they're about the size of a grapefruit or something, and they're just like the most magical things in the world, and it's like, wow, this is really cool, and somehow there's a crazy friend of his that was in our party at the time, and he was able to teleport to places, and we teleported to like the nearest dwarven heartstone because I think he was a thief and just wanted to get it or something, and we teleported to it, and the stone was like 20 feet tall.
Does it fit in a backpack?
So obviously that just our sense of scale is completely blown. Is like, how we can't, okay, we got to go. But that blowing the sense of scale is it's like, you have your normal little world and the Iron Giant appears. They're just like, okay, my sense of scale is different now.
Yeah.
And so that was a cool moment. I mean, it's also like in Star Wars. I mean, that was an early one that where you just like, oh, there's this little ship, and then this giant, Star Destroyer behind it. Oh my gosh, that thing is big. And so those kind of blowing your sense of scale moments is something I thought would be a good surprise. And I thought, like, well, what would be ridiculous to have happen if you just have a sense of scale, and that's what came out of Democratus came out of that. Just like, what if something really small blew up to the size of a planet, or the size of a planet shrunk to something really small?
Yeah, just those two moments, like just so memorable.
The planet walks into a bar. Yeah,
the planet walks in. It's a joke, right? A planet walks into a bar. And, and and there's a literal double take, when I'm like, what is happening? And he comes in, and then you realize he's going to be part of or they are going to be part of the party. And then later I actually forgot to tell Brett this, when the whole scenario on the Grimacer was happening right toward the end there, and you know that the atmosphere of the ship is being sucked out into space, and so you know that once that force field goes, right before, like, there's this sense of the vacuum coming, and right before he blows up, the Democratus blows up to regular size, it dawned on me, wait, we need an atmosphere to survive. We have an atmosphere. He's in the room. and then it happened. You know what I mean? So like I didn't predict it like long ahead of, far ahead of time, but it was like the moment before, like, no, are they going to do this? And then it happened. It was just playing with those expectations. It was the whole game was playing against expectations, I feel like. Even just the Grimacer itself, that whole comic book sequence. It was essentially like almost like an enormous introduction for Paco, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, right. And well, it's also like one of the characters that just came out was sort of your typical superhero, and fitting that in the normal universe was interesting, and it was sort of a joy to be that whimsical with a hard science story, but it's also like could be construed to sort of like bring up science versus faith or whatever you want to talk about, because it's just like all of a sudden this is your reality, and how does this shake that sense of reality you have? Yeah. I'm down for science, but it's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, well, and Hephaestus as well. That was an amusement park essentially, right? It's sort of like you have this big monastery, but they sort of have a town below the monastery, and so you'll have like, there's an arcade on there, and like it's sort of like a coaster. Sad, like it's a horrible lava-filled planet, but they're trying to make it a tourist destination to keep going. Right. Yeah, weird contrast, and the priests are selling T-shirts and stuff, and
exactly.
Super, and I think can you speak to like how did you fit in? I mean, essentially felt like you guys did whatever you kind of wanted to, because you sounds like you had a Bible, but when you have such a wide variety of, I guess, just settings and themes within the same game. I mean, Brett, you should share your TV episode Star Trek sort of analogy. I think that helped us a lot, kind of grok what we were playing.
what we came to sort of feel we were playing was a series of episodes, and I remember in the last 10 years or maybe even a little more, people have been talking about how maybe the right model for video games is TV seasons or TV shows, TV series, rather than movies, right? And of course, back then it was more movies. Like, movies were our model. We were drawing a lot of inspiration, obviously, from movies. But this game is maybe the first game I can think of that feels like a series of Star Trek episodes or Doctor Who episodes or what have you.
That's true.
And feels really ahead of its time for that, and also gives you constant little beads of reward, like, I finished off this little bit of story because I went to this place and I did these things, right? But then that comes to a close. I resolve the issue there, and then we go on our merry way. Was that intentionally part of the design, or did it just kind of grow out of the story that you wanted to tell?
Well, part of it was I think the characters came first. Mm-hmm. So it was basically having to tell their stories, like, how do you have a universe with a sort of brilliant space scientist and a planet and a robot and a down to this luck detective and a superhero, like how does that fit? And then some of those became like civilizations or stuff, like you have You have to have Krypton to have the superheroes, and you have to have a planet of scientists to sort of frame Ro, and so on. So again, a lot of them would have been like sort of home worlds to some, or destination worlds, like, you know, seeking out the ancient knowledge at Hephaestus or something that always seems to be secreted away, like the Citadel in Game of Thrones or something. So a lot of them just came from that, and some of them we didn't get to, but that's why you have the sort of disparate nature of destinations, and some of them came just from the story. It's like, well, now they have to find out this thing, and where would that be, and so on.
Interesting order of operations that the characters are coming first. I mean, it's actually cool to hear that, and it makes a lot of sense in retrospect. And it gives them more, I guess I'd say, more kind of meaning and purpose as you find them, you know, and add them to your party.
Narrative path,
right? Yeah, they're just. I mean, having, you know, sort of character-first stories, they have to tell their story, and that's sort of dictated. You know, the stuff like you're not expecting comes out of your characters, and just like, I know the overall story, but they kind of like made their way across the galaxy.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah. You know, another comparison that came to my mind when we started playing this game was actually Mass Effect. I don't know if you ever had any conversations with anyone on that team, but there's a lot of, I mean, you even have a codex kind of thing in the UI, and obviously, you know, nobody has a monopoly on the concept of a codex, but this concept of you know, your party members having, you know, in their case, it's loyalty missions, but, you know, the characters in your party really drove a lot of the core spine of at least, you know, Mass Effect 2 and 3. But, I don't know, there's a lot of similarities in just the kind of galaxy spanning, universe spanning stories, you know, and kind of,
Jake played Mass Effects, and he says, "Oh, dude, you got to play these." Like, I think some people in the team were fans of Anachronox.
Yeah, I would not be surprised.
If we get more cool games out of it, that's cool.
Yeah,
you know, that's great.
No, good. It's good perspective to have on it. Yeah, and then I think a little bit with that, I wanted to ask about world structure, and I can guess at sort of some of the answers, but, you know, it was definitely an age other than RPGs and JRPGs. It was definitely an age, especially, I guess, in id Tech games specifically, where linearity was pretty much kind of guiding things, but you definitely had more of an RPG structure here, and I assume that's kind of from some of the influences you already mentioned. But it was it was neat to be able to return to spaces and have those spaces change a little bit, but then re-explore them if you miss stuff. And can you talk about any of that, or is it sort of?
I mean, I played a lot of the Final Fantasies, but the primary influence, I think, was Chrono Trigger, because you had a party of 3, and, you know, lots of different paths through the game and different endings. In fact, you know, there's even like lots of depth that most people don't know about. I believe if you Richie wrote like 800 pages of script for this game. Whoa. So it's like four movies, and because I think a page is a minute or something like that. And then, but like if you take Ro Bowman back to Rowdy's and talk a lot to the like guy at the door, he like gets a crush on her and like starts doing really like bad drawings for her and stuff. And it's
wow.
Kind of
yeah. So, that's awesome.
Yeah. But, the construction though of the thing is basically, I wanted, you know, it to matter who you have with you when you get to key points in the story. And we couldn't like, you know, develop, you know, whatever the permutations are, many worlds, but we wanted at certain points to, you know, like, you go to completely different places on Democratus depending on who you have with you.
Yeah, that was extraordinary to discover. I didn't know that. I assumed that Tim had played the same that I had. I didn't even realize I had chosen sort of what I was going to get because of the characters I had in my party. So that was quite a conversation to have. And another one of the game's kind of surprises. Kind of a strange choice in retrospect, I feel like. I mean, it seems unlikely that players would go back and play the other potential branches. And in fact, Tim pointed out that in the credits, at some point, you just started noodling and writing whatever you felt like in the credit sequence, including go back and play the other versions.
It's fun. It's fun. Well, I mean, there's a lot of games where he said like, "Hey, did you see all the endings, or did you collect all this or that?" And that I was a fan. I was like, "Oh, hey, I'll also go see if I can do that and stuff."
Yeah.
So I mean, I thought real super fans would go back and play. There are people that have played all of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it was just interesting that you could have different experiences and talk about those experiences. So, I mean, even just in conversation that has value between players.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, water cooler talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just surprised. We were talking about how that maybe was your own answer to Deus Ex having multiple, replayability, right? As having different content for different players was.
That's a sort of a different vibe in that it's more like they did in the current Zelda. It's just like you have certain tools,
right.
emergently choose what you want to do in the situation, but it's often this. Sort of generally the same situation, but I think both are equally valid and both super fun ways to approach what the player experiences.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it definitely reminds me of, I guess it's maybe. I didn't play Chrono Trigger. I did play Chrono Cross, and I feel like that was a game that had.
That's good.
It's good through,
It's good, but go back and play Chrono Trigger. You can play it on your iPad now if you want.
Yeah, I know it's been on my list forever. It's maybe something Tim doesn't play a lot of JRPGs, and they're kind of long for the cast, but it's also one that I'd like to revisit for sure.
Yeah, it's the one that pretty much everyone tells me to play. So you're not alone on that. But
you can actually. You could have played it this weekend. In fact, it's like if you put Brian Squirrel Azerlo on the team actually played that game in 3 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can do it like 8 hours a day or something like that. You can get through it.
We'll probably. I mean, Brett and I've talked about it. Well, that'll probably be our. Don't you think that'll be our next JRPG? I mean, even though it's long.
Yeah, very likely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too lauded by people, to not be the next one. We played Final Fantasy IX was our JRPG we've played so far.
Yeah. And in 9, was it Vivi or Vivo?
Vivi, yeah.
Vivi. I can't remember it because I named it the other one. I just changed one letter for some reason.
Oh, I didn't even think. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I just named my character. That character changing one letter for some reason just to mess up my memory of who it is.
Right.
But that character reminded me a lot of Pal.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of the glowing eyes and the dark field.
Yeah,
totally
true.
Little fat body.
Yeah, the archetypes were all there. I mean, I definitely got handed to you. I really wanted to spend more time with Paco, but of course it's Paco, right? Is that my remembering?
Yeah, Paco.
Yeah, Paco.
But he came in so late, you didn't get to spend much time with him.
So we've tangented about 10 times off. We're talking about genesis of characters. One of the friends of Jake and Richie, Peter Marquardt, he was a producer at Ironstorm, but he had acted in their short film and was actually in El Mariachi.
Oh, cool.
Which is another great story, but that's a story for Robert Rodriguez, I guess. But Paco's name is just a joke on his name. So Paco is basically Peter in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And Estrella is star, as in, Peter was a star in that film or something like that.
Right.
So it's
cool.
this is a joke on that.
Cool. Yeah.
But the I just thought the Fist was a good name for El Puño was a good name for the superhero with gigantic fists.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Ro Bowman is a joke on Carmack.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because John and I would be goofing around and do this kind of like little robot dance outside Carmack's office because he was so left-brained.
Yeah.
And so it's just like sort of like saying he's like a Robo-Man. So originally Ro Bowman was a male scientist, but I thought it would be interesting to go against stereotypes and be forward thinking. And although that's not forward thinking, there are plenty of female scientists at the time, but just to like put that out there because movies tend to not be cool about that, and TV even at the time was not cool about that. And I think it's like I just want to make games with women and protagonists from now on just to like make up for the past 40 years or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Balance it out for sure. Yeah,
definitely necessary.
But yeah, that's
how funny.
That's where that came from. And
what about Stiletto Anyway?
Stiletto Anyway.
My personal favorite name.
One of the coolest
any
names.
character.
Yeah. That's another weird, like out of the blue name. That name just like boom, Stiletto Anyway. I was like, what? what could that possibly be? So, that was what she is now. But why is she that now?
Uh-huh.
And that was sort of a joke on the sort of, again, the stereotypical video game vixen. They're just like, but if you read the text, like when she's talking to Fatima and stuff like that, or Fatima, as she's supposed to be pronounced, she's actually, like not that stacked like a very video game. That's an outfit she wears to sort of distract people while she's on her sort of missions, as it were.
Yeah, that's not her. She's kind of in incognito, kind of.
Yeah, originally she was Serenata Iniwa, and she's was the sort of tight-laced assistant to boot. So
yeah, and all the just kind of the history that some of the characters have with each other, and that elaborate story with Fatima and the car chase, and kind of finding out about how that all came to be. And that's kind of why I mentioned the facial expressions, because at that time, there's that one scene at the end where you get close-ups of both Fatima and Sly. I think they're talking to each other, right? And their facial expressions, there's some surprisingly subtle moments in that conversation in my memory, and it was kind of heartfelt and really interesting. And again, this just one of the themes for me with this game is it's just surprise after surprise after surprise, just around every corner. Brett and I commented multiple times on how we could never predict what was going to happen next, because it was just so crazy. Like the superhero world comes out. It's just just insane.
Well, that was another of what would be the most surprising thing in a hard science game. What would be the most surprising thing for a member of your cast? What would be the most surprising thing? Mm-hmm. So it just kept trying to infuse that wherever I could. So you're just like, what?
Yeah, it's a good goal.
And
yeah,
honestly, Jake and Richie did that sort of car chase revelation scene, and I welled up watching that. It was just like seeing your characters come to their emotional fruition was just like, oh,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. It felt like, and I think we mentioned this in one of the episodes. It really felt like the whole team was really all pulling in the same direction on this game, even though the game itself pulls in so many different directions. And some of the names you're just throwing out team member names, almost like you're still working with them. They come right to mind. Am I right about that? Was it a pretty healthy team?
Yeah, I mean the core team were just, like after it was sort of like not to compare it at all, but it's like a sort of a Band of Brothers kind of war story. I mean, we were essentially crunching for 3.5 years and death crunching for a year and 3 months. Death crunch is 7 days a week, 14 hours a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, the problem was probably mine for the hubris of making a Squaresoft sort of sized game when they have teams 150 and we had 15.
You had 15?
Yeah, so that was
unbelievable.
It was a lot of work. But anyway, the end we really bonded, and to this day, every year we have an Anachronox dinner at GDC.
Oh, that's amazing! That's great.
Yeah, and we actually set up a Minecraft server so that we're all sort of like making these ridiculous, huge castles, and Jake making his giant pagoda and sort of a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired house, and I made a gigantic castle with 100 signs hidden in it, and Squirrel made this giant crazy lava tube, and Joey made a gigantic like bedrock to as tall as you can build winged statue. It's pretty cool. He also did Joey did the Super Mario theme. You walk over touch plates and it plays chords.
Oh, Jesus.
It does. It's amazing. I was just literally amazed. But I mean, he's a concert level pianist too, so he's he knows his stuff.
Yeah, that's really, Brett had predicted that sort of team connection with after playing the game, and it's really nice to hear that actually is true, and you guys are still you're still connected and talking.
Yeah.
Trial by
my brother.
You go through it like that fire together, and we
they're all my brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, we get it. We totally get it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Awesome. Is there we kind of ended the last episode, we talked a little bit, we wanted to summarize our understanding, and this is probably a short topic, but I was interested if there are any tidbits that you'd like to share about Ion Storm specifically, because it was a pretty unique situation and kind of like cabal of a bunch of different developers and company to be formed. Is there anything to mention there with the context of this game?
I mean, it was to get this game made required a special company that just said, what do you want to make?
Right.
And that's how we founded it. And then IDOS were champions as far as like sticking with us to make sure it got done, and then that was amazing.
Yeah.
So kudos to them and well wishes.
Yeah, the structure of that company was, Brett and I talked about that too. That seems like it was one of the few, if not only, situations where a passion like this could have been made, because Ion Storm was just built on that, for you guys to be able to do what you wanted to do. So.
Yeah, it's what originally we were called Dream Design. It's like what happens if there was a company, I think John said, where you could design what you want, and I said that would be a dream, and so that was that was our working title for many months.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, at the time, definitely, I can remember. We talked a little bit about how developers were kind of trying to work out from under the yoke of publishers and the limitations that publishers put on games. I mean, licensed titles were a huge part of the industry at the time, and individual creative projects seemed like they were drying up, at least at this scale. So it's really refreshing to see something like this, something like Ion Storm at that time.
Yeah, it was great to get Deus Ex. Was really great.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun to voice Walton Simmons in that. I know it's just at the time that was just based on this one actor in, I think, a show called Murder One.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I think it was, and he had just a ridiculously low voice.
Yeah, that Daniel, it was like Daniel something. Yeah, Daniel with
just like, so that's where that came from. But it was in one take too. it was like, okay, I'll just read this out, get it down, and then I'll do the real take. It says, no, that's it. That's all you have time for. It's like, what? It turned out okay, I guess. But
yeah, that's awesome.
I was waiting for that second read.
We'll eventually play Deus Ex, I think, too, for its info.
Yeah, well, have they been infected? All that stuff.
Yeah, nice. It's nice that someone else's dogs can show up on the podcast too, other than my own, by the way. Just to thank you for that. Usually my dogs are just going at it. So. Well, awesome. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts, Brett, or should we?
Yeah, no, I think that's. I mean, we're coming up on an hour. I wanted also to make sure we gave you a chance to talk about what you've been doing since and what you've been doing lately. I mean, you've been in the industry now quite some time. I don't want to,
Actually, 30 years last September.
Wow, was it? Congratulations.
30 years, yeah.
Congratulations, indeed.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I should probably write a book or something. Anyway.
Yeah.
So currently I sort of like, did that early mobile company with John, and it was like 6 months too early.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of being early, it was definitely ahead of its time.
Well, I guess we kind of like got the desire to try forefront things, like when you do the first person shooter, kind of invent that, then you sort of like are excited about the bleeding edge of other stuff, so we actually got messed over by publishers at the time. So if we would have been lasted 6 more months, we would have been at the start of the iPhone, which would have been amazing. But
oh yeah, right in that window. Yeah. And NG Moco ended up being sort of that. They hit the spot in that around that same time. Yeah,
it was a different paradigm coming, because there was decks on phones that was hard to get into, so Jamdad or
Jamdad would yep.
So occupy the top of those. But anyways, so various companies later trying different things. Now it's like mobile is the big market, and so I'm at Glue Mobile, and our studio, formerly called Play First, we're now Glue Play because we're part of the company. Oh. And we did the most recent Cooking Dash and Restaurant Dash with Gordon Ramsay, and those are doing well. And it was really cool to write for Gordon Ramsay and how I watched all his shows and then said, okay, excuse the horrible accent, but this is how I think you'd say it. Come on, kind of coaching him to speak like he spoke on episode 3 of Master Show.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Well, he's such a nice guy. It's just he says, just go on, direct me. I get directed every day. I don't care.
That's nice.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Really cool.
Well, of course, Play First, creators of Diner Dash, which you could argue is one of the biggest casual games ever. Like Diner Dash.
The original Diner Dash was done by Eric Zimmerman and a couple of folks, and then like a web game or something, and then Play First got rights to that, and then I designed the sort of rebirth Diner Dash in 2014, I think, and that was fun to do, sort of reimagine the game as what it would be on mobile and modern and stuff. That was fun.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much, Tom. I really appreciate having the time with you and talking about this game. That it really is an underappreciated gem. We both. Tim referenced the Jeff Green Greenspeak column that talked about how can we have let this company go when it had this kind of game in it. And I definitely echo that. I went back and read it. It was like, oh wow, yeah, this is really something special, and you can feel the whole team being behind it when you play it. Like I had said. It's a real unique thing.
I appreciate it. It was a work of love. We all kind of fell in love with the characters in the universe, and just wanted to make sure it saw saw to fruition.
Yeah, literally the last note I wrote down in my notes while playing it was labor of love. Yeah.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks
Great
so much.
having you on, sir.
Thank you. It was a wonderful being here.
Welcome back from the break. What a cool interview.
Yeah.
I'm kicking myself now that I didn't get the obvious Hitchhiker's Guide stuff.
You failed me on that one.
I know. I mean, it's there's two big obvious things I can immediately think of in retrospect. One is getting sucked out the airlock, which happens at the very near the beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide. Arthur Dent and Ford Prefect get sucked out into space, and they're rescued at the last possible moment by the Heart of Glass, I think is the name of the. Anyway,
yeah, this is your territory, so I'm.
Yeah, I know. And then, I know, because you wouldn't even remember any of this stuff, even if you had read it. And then the other big one is that, of course, there's a babblefish that allows you to interpret alien languages in. And that one I should have definitely picked up on. In fact, when I remember, I didn't make a note about it, and I remember at the time going, "Oh, it's a babblefish." Like, I mean, you got to have that in your science fiction world. Mm-hmm. And then it just went out of my head, and I forgot entirely about it. But yeah, it's pretty great stuff. Drawing from a lot of influences, really. Yeah, you know,
the other, I mean, when he mentioned, did he mention the Ion Storm Dream? That was on air, right?
Yes, that was on air. Yeah. I think it was on air.
I don't remember if he mentioned that afterwards or not.
That was on air.
But that kind of sums up, you know, not just the other Ion Storm games, but this one in particular, that sums it up for me too, you know, and the fact that he replied to John with, you know, it would be a dream, and that was the code name for the company for a while, it sounds like. And I mean, this is like your dream game, right? It's like you literally do whatever you want, go wherever you want, make up whatever character you want to, and you just mash it all together. And he had it was awesome to hear that he had a full universe Bible and a map of the universe, which I'd love to see someday. It's just a shame because there's so much into that. But the labor of love aspect was really fun to hear too, because it's very, very obvious.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I actually kind of now hope, like with Mark Laidlaw, that this will prod him. This will be the last little bit, because we didn't talk about it on the cast, but he was telling us before that interview about how he had a story for Half-Life 3 episodes, or Half-Life 2 episode 3 or whatever. And he sort of talked a little bit about that with us while we were just kind of getting warmed up and everything. And then like 2 weeks later or something like that showed up on the web.
Yeah.
Maybe.
A buddy of mine at Valve was giving me crap. It was like, that was your fault. That was your guys' fault. And I was like, no, I didn't. We'd like to think that it was.
I would say credit, not fault. That's to our credit.
Yeah, he put it that way.
Valve may not feel that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, maybe we'll see that someday. Your idea of, and I think this was off air, of having it as a radio play, would be amazing.
Radio.
Like a podcast, maybe a podcast series.
Yeah, there's so many good radio drama podcasts out there. They could do, then the budget doesn't have to be as high and stuff, and they could have fun with it. But.
Absolutely, I would love to hear more of that. I would love to hear the backstory for Pal's Planet, and then that black and white planet. I knew I wasn't crazy. Like, I kept waiting for us to go there.
Wait, so you didn't talk about that in the series though. I didn't,
because I kept expecting us to go there. So back in the day, when this game was getting written up in magazines and things like that, there was always the screenshot in black and white And I think it was even, there may have been a trailer or something like that as well. So you got it in motion. You were like, this is not just a printing error. This is like a design choice. And I can definitely remember just being like, while we're playing it, like, okay, we're set, this next world is going to be the black and white world. And then it wasn't. And I was like, damn, am I crazy? Like, am I just not remembering that properly?
Okay.
But yes, it was in a lot of the preview type stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it just got cut. Yeah.
Just cut for time to Death March for a year and a quarter, is, wow.
15 people for this game.
That's
I didn't count them in the credits, but that's astounding. Yeah, for the size of this thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can't even imagine, because of course you're developing technology, and he mentioned a couple of things that they had to make for it. Planet or whatever it was called for the camera stuff, and Ape, the Anachronox programming environment, and it's just, those are the things you just did back then. You didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't
a little bit about that.
Yeah, it wasn't like it came out of the box. You got the thing, and it had just all the tools you could ever want. There was no asset store, right? You couldn't just go and buy a thing that fit in. So you had to build everything, even if you're starting with the Quake 2 engine. There's so much you would have to build. So, yeah, pretty astonishing stuff. A lot of interesting things there. So, and of course, that was a year that we were busy working on Jedi Starfighter. So that's why we were too busy.
That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, not with that. That was our own hard work project. I mean, it was not a death march by any means, but it was a less than a year project. So we were busy all the time. And actually that might be my worst crunch in terms of how it impacted me. So personally.
Yeah, history. I can imagine. Yeah.
Anyway, let's put all that aside and put Anachronox behind us. I guess we should first hit email, and then we can talk about next time. This time we've just got the one email this time, so I'm going to read it. It's from Mas Neotech Proto, who was in the streams with me and watching, and he said the email is I checked. He was talking about trophies or achievements or what have you in the subject line. I checked, and it didn't seem like there were any achievements available. As developers, which achievements would you argue for adding to the game? Obviously, building and completing your party, marking your progress along the main quest, and perhaps even collecting the bugs and tacos. But what would some of the more obscure ones have been, in your opinion? Granted that you guys probably missed a bunch of stuff. And when I say granted that you missed some things, that's not a criticism. The game was sometimes laborious. Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to imagine. I think my obvious one that is one of those ways you use achievements would be to point out that there was this other content that you missed. To be able to say, hey, get this one for scouring the planet or something like that, and that would be playing all the possible worlds that were available to you on Democratus after it blew up. I think would be one that I could see doing.
The two that came to my mind that I always appreciate and kind of and actually Tom mentioned an example of this with bringing Ro back to Rowdy's. Because they have so many permutations based on who you have in your party for what and if you bring them to certain locations. And in some cases, their special abilities unlock things that you only can unlock if you bring them back to a place that they wouldn't normally be at. Right. I think that would be a cool thread to do. So it's like have Democratus speak to the blah blah blah, or go and kind of generate a bunch of achievements that way, just so people can experience that. And then the other one, I think, having some sort of framework of scoring or something for all of the mini games for each of the characters feels like rife with getting really good at those and hack into or pick a lock of five deep lock, you know what I mean, or however you'd say it, with sly, and then punch a thing with Paco, for three, for a whole minute or something. I don't know, stuff like that. That just exaggerates those little mini games, because I think they were just so fun and weird and different. And they were all so different from each other that you probably get a bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a particularly funny little aspect of the game, in that each character had different abilities, and every ability was its own special little mini game. It was a really fun part of the experience, even though some were better than others. I was not a huge fan of the Pipe Dream one, because it only had the 3 pipes. I kept expecting that to change in some way. Like later on in the game, I'd have more pipes so that the puzzles would be different. But yeah, that was a terrific aspect of the game. Yeah, those are two things. I mean, this is way before. This is a few years before Achievements. I think Achievements, you're talking 2004 or 5, I guess 5 maybe. I don't know if they were there at the beginning of the Xbox 360.
No, I don't think so.
So maybe even 2006. So yeah, this is 5 years before that. You see this in a lot of remasters, like playing Day of the Tentacle as a remaster when we played it for the cast. There's a ton of stuff that does exactly that. The sorts of try to combine this object with that object, or use the such and such on every door, or whatever it is. And so those older adventure games that had no design towards achievements at all have, if they are remastered, they have to provide them if they're on the consoles. So it's been interesting to see the choices that they make. And it's a fun way to force you to explore. So that's why I thought of mine along those lines. I think that in a similar way, there's probably in the Hive, maybe visiting every possible area, and things like that.
Oh, the other one that comes to mind that neither of us delved into very much is the bug.
Oh, right, yeah, the Elementor.
Elementor. There's probably some crazy stuff you do with that.
I will forward you an email from Aaron. Actually, you have it because you have access to the Gmail account, but he sent in a very long email, so I'm not going to read the whole thing here. But the element, it's about the Elementor, and there's how you power that up, and you're supposed to feed the bugs to different things. It's
wow,
it's complicated, and yeah, it's just a.
I'm fascinated by it, and I think if I had more time, I would have definitely delved into it. So maybe I'll watch a YouTube on it or something and see what it was all about.
Oh, your equipped shield cell affects Mystech output. It's a hugely complicated system, but yeah, that's definitely one that you wonder, we probably could have asked them, but it doesn't.
I was going to ask, but then I realized kind of neither of us played with it much, so it might have been hard to, really ask good questions.
It also feels like the sort of thing that had the game been both halves, it might have had more use, right? So it's a thing they did enough that it could pay off if you wanted to invest in it, but you didn't have to. I feel like that final battle might have been a little bit easier if I had. But yeah, that's definitely another thing that I could imagine. Definitely getting all the bugs or whatever would be a thing. Actually, it's that you can feed the bugs remember on the way down into the red light district in the sewers, there's a dude who's selling these weird relics.
Five
or six things, and they're all weird, and you're I don't know what any of these do. Those are the things that you buy to feed the bugs, to power the bugs up.
Okay.
So it's a whole, Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's very complicated. But anyway, yeah, so that's the email that we have. That was sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Thanks for sending in, Moss. Why don't you tell us what's next?
Yes, we're going to hit a new genre, which I'm very excited about. It's one of my favorite genres in stealth action or stealth-based games. We are going to start with Metal Gear Solid 1.
Of course we are.
Yes, we are.
That doesn't have a lot of boss battles or anything, does it?
No, there's no boss battles. It's bossless. Yeah. So Metal Gear Solid 1.
In a way, every battle's a boss battle, really. Is that too spoilery?
No, that's fine.
Because he's big boss, right? He's big boss or something.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, I wasn't
a clone of boss, or
he's a clone. Yeah, you're way spoiling now, but it's not that game per se. But
I know. Well, yeah, it all ties together, man. I've got all this red yarn figuring out how it all works. I've got it all connected with my push pins.
You haven't even played 5 though, right?
I have not.
Or I will say V.
I know.
Is more appropriate. Yeah.
That's because I haven't finished 4 yet.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Anyway, yeah, Metal Gear Solid, the time has come. I'm very excited. And yeah, it also hits a genre we haven't played yet, which Brett and I were talking about wanting to get into. And there's a lot of great stealth games out there. We'll get to other ones, Thief and such down the road. But this is our first one. We're going to play up shortish section. We're going to play up through Ocelot, the famous, infamous, legendary Ocelot. And then we'll stop there, and we'll talk about the series and such. So that's what we're going to play next time.
Is Ocelot in all of the games?
Yes, in some form.
Oh, man. This series.
Well, actually, I guess it actually is him every time. Yeah, because in 3, yeah. So it's him.
Yeah, he's definitely in 3. He's young Ocelot in 3.
Yeah. Ocelot. He's one of those evergreen characters, and he's a big part of 5 as well.
Oh, really? Okay, that's that part's surprising. Actually, I didn't realize that. Yeah, no, I did finally play this game a handful of years ago, and maybe in 2012 or so, and I did quite like it. So I will be happy to return to it. I think my initial experience in bouncing off of it was largely because I had that might have been the first time somebody's like, here, play this console game on a PlayStation, right? And I just bounced off in a major.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in that. I bought a PlayStation 1 for this game. I didn't have one before that. So it was and I actually think I think after that I didn't play much on it on the console. After that I didn't, and I wasn't really a big PlayStation fan, but for whatever reason, somebody showed me the demo at work. I was at Lug's at the time, and I was like, oh man, this is the killer app for me. This is the
one, yeah.
PlayStation.
Well, and after we play that on PlayStation 1, there are plenty of JRPGs that we could dive into at that point. So
yeah, that's true.
They have that possibility. Okay,
and I will be playing it. On the original console. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it on a PS2, which is still playing it on the original console because there's a PS1 inside the PS2.
Fair enough.
It's just a single chip instead of multiple chips, or actually it wasn't multiple chips, but it was more complicated in the original hardware. But yeah, they shrunk it down. They shrunk it down in some sort of crazy technology that is straight out of a Metal Gear game. I think it'll have nano machines. I think it'll have a lot to. There'll be a lot to touch on there. We're talking about doing 3 episodes, just because it's not a super long game. But I honestly wonder if that's going to be enough to cover all the craziness.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe
we'll see how it goes.
We'll start with that, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, because it's not just the genre. I think it's the production value and style of it, right? And Kojima himself and that company, and Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I replayed everything, or actually a couple of my was playing for the first time, maybe two I was playing for the first time. I don't know if you remember this in my old blog. I kind of live blogged them, not actual live blog them, but I didn't, just kind of stream of consciousness blogging, and as I was playing them, so I wonder if I have those someplace. I'll have to go dig it up. There's probably some funny stuff.
Yeah, I can remember those. Yeah, the Shadow Moses project or something like that, I think you called it.
Yeah, that's right. I totally titled it.
Because you're a nerd.
Yeah.
And maybe this will be my final impetus to play some of V. Because that is a game I've wanted
the thing about
for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get too far afield, but the thing about it is, as far as gameplay goes, it's the best one.
Yeah,
in my opinion. It's just they finally got it after 5+ games. Actually, Peace Walker is very good as well, but that's
wait a minute, which one?
Whole nother story.
So, Peace Walker, was that a handheld one?
Peace Walker was originally PSP,
okay.
But then they remastered or up-resed it basically and put it on the PS3 collection, so you can play it on PS3.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and that's actually the only one that you can play co-op.
Oh,
which I did. Yeah,
with Reed.
With Brandon, from Brandon Fernandez from Crystal.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because he's a big Metal Gear fan too, so we played that together. And playing Metal Gear, kind of traditional-ish Metal Gear co-op is, mind blowing for me. Yeah, but I'd be happy to.
You can play V co-op, can't you?
No. You can play. There's multiplayer modes, sort of stuff, but you can't play the story. No.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, interesting. All right. Well, that's a lot of digression into Metal Gear. Yep. Next week, we'll start diving into it. That's right. And of course, next week is a prime numbered episode, so you're also on the hook for hosting duties, my friend.
Yep.
Oh, and there's your dog.
And there's the dog. Right on cue.
Oh, so it must be time to go. So you can shoot us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You, of course, find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub. I keep an eye on all of that, so you can reach me there. Tim, not so much. You can find me on Twitter at Brett_Duville and him at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
If I can get my act together, you can also find me on Twitch at Brett Duville with the _ in between as well. I might be able to stream this next weekend. Hopefully I'll be able to get all the stuff I need, and hopefully there will be no technical difficulties, and it'll just all work magically the first time. That's what happens for everybody who streams, I'm sure. But until next time, I will bid you good night.
Good night.